You know someone like this. Maybe it's you. The person who walks through stores without buying anything, who checks the price before the product, who has money in the account but still hesitates at the checkout. It's not that they can't afford it. They just don't purchase. Something in them resists the transaction, questions the necessity, calculates whether this thing is truly needed or just wanted, and want somehow never feels like enough. From the outside, it looks like discipline, maybe even wisdom. While others accumulate stuff and debt, this person moves through life light. Their closet isn't overflowing. Their home isn't cluttered. They don't complain about money because they've built a buffer most people never achieve. Friends joke about their frugality, half admiring, half puzzled. How do you just not want things? But inside, the experience is more complicated. It's not always peace. Sometimes it's tension. A quiet battle every time a purchase approaches. The mental math that runs automatically. Do I really need this? Can I find it cheaper? What if I regret it? The relief when they decide not to buy isn't joy. It's the easing of anxiety. The transaction avoided feels like danger escaped. Most people never examine this pattern. They assume it's just personality, just preference, just being good with money. But this relationship with spending wasn't born from nowhere. It has roots in childhood, in the nervous system, in beliefs about security and worth that were formed long before the first dollar was ever earned. And understanding those roots changes everything. The instinct to conserve is ancient. For most of human history, resources were scarce and unpredictable. Food couldn't be stored for long. Shelter required constant maintenance. One bad season could mean death. The brains that survived were the ones that held on tight, that didn't waste, that anticipated scarcity even in times of abundance. We descend from ancestors who saved, because the ones who didn't disappeared. This wiring is still running. The modern brain treats money the way the ancient brain treated food, as a survival resource. Spending triggers the same circuits that once fired when sharing meat with the tribe, necessary sometimes, but always a calculation. Is this worth reducing my reserves? Will I regret this later? The discomfort around spending isn't irrational. It's evolutionary. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Some people feel this pull more strongly than others. Their conservation instinct is turned up high. It doesn't matter that they have savings, that their job is stable, that scarcity isn't a real threat. The ancient part of the brain doesn't care about bank statements. It feels the potential loss in every transaction. Holding on feels safe. Letting go feels like risk. This isn't a flaw. In many ways, it's a gift. These are the people who build reserves while others live paycheck to paycheck, who weather storms that devastate the unprepared, who carry a kind of security that spenders never know. But the gift has a shadow. When conservation becomes compulsion, when saving becomes hoarding, when the inability to spend costs more than spending ever would, that's when the ancient wisdom becomes a modern prison. No one is born frugal. Babies want endlessly. They have no concept of limit, cost, or conservation. The relationship with money is learned, absorbed in childhood long before anyone explains what a dollar is worth. In those early years, the nervous system watches, listens, and records everything. Not lectures about finance, but feelings. The atmosphere around money, the tension or ease when it was discussed, the story the family told without words. Some children grew up in homes where money was visibly scarce. They watched parents count coins, heard arguments about bills, felt the weight when something couldn't be bought. The lesson landed deep. There isn't enough. Be careful. Every purchase carries risk. These children learn to want less, to ask for less, to make themselves small enough to fit inside the family's limits. Decades later, they still feel guilty ordering the expensive dish, even when they're paying. Others grew up with money but without security. Wealth that came and went. A parent whose income was unstable. The experience of having, then suddenly not having. This teaches something different. Don't trust abundance. It can disappear. The child learns that even full pockets can empty without warning. They become adults who save compulsively, not because they lack, but because they learned that having means nothing if it can vanish. Some learned that money was love. Gifts meant approval. Withholding meant punishment. Money became tangled with worth, with belonging, with whether you were good or bad. For them, every spending decision carries emotional weight far beyond the price. They're not just buying a thing, they're navigating a minefield of meaning that was laid in childhood and never cleared. There's a particular kind of calm that comes from not spending. The bank balance stays stable. The wallet stays full. Nothing leaves, nothing is risked, nothing is lost. For some people, this stillness isn't just preference, it's regulation. Their nervous system has learned that holding on equals safety. Every purchase avoided is a small dose of peace. Every dollar kept is proof that they're okay. This isn't about greed or materialism in reverse. It's about control. Life is unpredictable. Jobs end, health fails, relationships collapse. But the money in the account, that stays. That's yours. That can't leave unless you let it. For a nervous system that grew up around chaos, around instability, around things disappearing without warning, this control is medicine. The savings aren't just numbers. They're a wall between you and the vulnerability you learn to fear. The problem is that safety built on not spending has no finish line. There's no amount that's finally enough. The goal keeps moving, because the safety isn't really in the money. It's in the feeling of holding on. Spend some, and the anxiety returns. The wall feels thinner. The nervous system demands you rebuild it, save more, spend less. The account grows while the permission to enjoy it shrinks. People in this pattern often can't explain why they don't spend. They'll say they're being responsible. They'll say they don't need much. But underneath the logic is a body that feels danger in letting go. A system that learned long ago that resources can vanish and no one will help you. Keeping money isn't about money anymore. It's about keeping yourself safe in a world that once felt very unsafe. They look the same from the outside. Both check prices, both resist impulse purchases, both live below their means and keep their spending tight. But inside, the experience is completely different. One is choosing. The other is compelled. One feels freedom in simplicity. The other feels trapped by the inability to let go. The line between frugal and fearful isn't about how much you spend. It's about why. Frugality is a conscious decision. It comes from values, from knowing what matters and refusing to waste resources on what doesn't. The frugal person can spend when something aligns with their priorities. They buy quality when it counts. They invest in experiences they care about. They feel no anxiety around money because their choices are intentional. Spending less isn't deprivation, it's curation. There's peace in it. Fear-based saving has a different texture. The resistance to spending isn't chosen. It's automatic. The thought of buying something triggers discomfort, sometimes panic. Even necessary purchases feel like loss. Even affordable things spark guilt. The money is there, but permission to use it isn't. The not spending doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like a cage you built yourself and can't find the key to. The fearful saver often doesn't know they're afraid. They've rationalized it so well. I just don't need things. I'm being responsible. You never know what might happen. The logic sounds reasonable. But underneath is a nervous system stuck in scarcity, hoarding against a disaster that may never come, unable to enjoy what they've built. Frugality creates abundance. Fear creates a full account and an empty permission to live. For most people, buying something is a simple exchange. Money leaves, value arrives. The transaction completes, and life moves on. But for some, spending doesn't feel like exchange. It feels like loss. Something is being taken. Something is leaving and not coming back. The money isn't just currency. It's safety. It's effort. It's a piece of themselves walking out the door. This feeling has roots. Money is never just money. It represents hours of your life traded for numbers in an account. It represents security against an uncertain future. It represents options, freedom, the ability to handle whatever comes. When you spend, you're not just losing paper or digits. You're losing what those things mean to you. And if money means safety, spending feels like becoming less safe. If money means freedom, spending feels like losing options. Some people feel this more intensely because of how they earned it. The money came hard. Long hours, difficult work, sacrifice. Every dollar carries the weight of what it cost to get. Spending it on something ordinary feels like disrespecting that effort. The purchase better be worth the hours of your life that paid for it. Most things aren't. So most things don't get bought. There's also an identity layer. Some people have built their sense of self around being someone who has savings, who is responsible, who doesn't waste. Each purchase threatens that identity. Spending feels like betraying who they've decided to be. The money stays not because it's needed, but because spending would mean becoming someone else, someone less careful, less disciplined, less safe. The dollars become glued to the self. The brain has a reward system, and it doesn't care about financial advice. It cares about what feels good. For most people, buying triggers dopamine, the anticipation of having something new, the pleasure of acquisition, the brief high of getting what you wanted. This is why shopping can become addictive. The brain learns that spending equals reward, and it wants more. But some brains are wired differently. For them, the dopamine comes not from spending, but from saving. Watching the number grow, seeing the balance climb, the satisfaction of another month with money left over. The high isn't in what they buy, it's in what they keep. Their reward system learned to find pleasure in accumulation, in restraint, in the growing pile that represents security. This isn't morally superior, it's just different wiring. The saver gets the same chemical hit the spender does, just from the opposite action. Checking the account and seeing growth feels like winning. Resisting a purchase feels like victory. The brain reinforces what feels good, so the pattern deepens. Saving becomes not just a habit, but a source of pleasure. Spending becomes not just unnecessary, but actively unpleasant. The problem comes when the wiring becomes rigid. The spender can't stop buying, even when it hurts them. The saver can't start spending, even when it would help them. Both are trapped by their own reward systems. The saver sits on resources they never use, getting dopamine hits from watching numbers that never translate into lived experience. The account grows, the life stays small. The brain feels good about a victory that costs more than it saves. There's a math that frugal people are good at, what things cost. But there's another math they often miss, what not buying costs. The trip not taken, the experience not had, the tool that would have saved hours, left unbought, the gift not given because it felt like too much, the body left in a chair that hurts because a better one seemed extravagant. Every no has a price. It just doesn't show up on a receipt. Time is the first hidden cost. Money can buy time, convenience, help, efficiency. The person who won't pay for the faster option spends hours instead. The one who won't hire help does everything themselves, slowly, exhaustingly. They save dollars and spend their life. The math looks good on paper. But paper doesn't capture evenings lost, energy drained, years spent doing what money could have solved. Relationships carry cost too. The partner who feels unseen because gifts seem wasteful. The friend not visited because the flight was too expensive. The children who learn that money matters more than moments. Frugality can become a wall between you and the people who want to experience life with you. You save for a future while missing the present. The account balance rises. The connection balance falls. Health is the cruelest cost. The checkup skipped because of the copay. The better food not bought because cheap was available. The gym membership rejected. The therapy postponed. The medication rationed. The body keeps a different ledger than the bank. It records every cut corner, every deferred investment, and eventually it sends a bill that no savings account can cover. The money saved becomes meaningless when there's no health left to spend it on. At some point, not spending stops being just behavior. It becomes identity. I'm not the kind of person who wastes money. I don't need much to be happy. I'm simple, low maintenance, not materialistic. These statements feel like self-knowledge, but sometimes they're armor, a way of making virtue out of limitation, a story that protects you from examining what's really underneath. There's pride in not needing. In a culture of excess, the person who wants less feels superior. They watch others chase things and feel a quiet satisfaction. I'm not like them. I'm free from that. The identity becomes precious because it separates you from the masses, gives you a sense of control in a chaotic world. You don't need things, and that means things can't hurt you. But identity built on not needing can become its own trap. When you've defined yourself as someone who doesn't spend, spending becomes a threat to who you are. Even when you can afford something, even when you want it, even when it would genuinely improve your life, the identity says no. You're not that person. That person is weak, wasteful, ordinary. So you stay in the small box you built, calling it freedom. The question worth asking is, do you not need much, or have you just learned to suppress the needing? Is the simplicity chosen or defended? There's a version of minimalism that comes from genuine contentment, wanting less because you already feel full. And there's a version that comes from fear, wanting less because wanting feels dangerous. One is freedom. The other is a cage painted to look like freedom. It often goes unspoken, but it's there. The slight tightening when a friend mentions what they paid for something. The internal calculation of how wasteful that seems. The quiet sense of superiority when someone complains about money while holding the expensive coffee you'd never buy. People who don't spend often carry a hidden judgment toward those who do. Not loud, not mean, just a constant, quiet measuring. This judgment serves a purpose. It reinforces the identity. If others are foolish for spending, then you're wise for saving. If they're out of control, you're disciplined. The comparison keeps your choices feeling correct, even when part of you wonders if you're missing something. Judging their excess quiets the voice that asks whether your restriction might also be extreme. But the judgment has a cost. It creates distance. You watch people enjoy things and feel separate from them, above them, but also alone. Their joy looks irresponsible to you. Your restraint looks cold to them. Neither says it directly, but the gap grows. You can't fully connect with people you're quietly judging, and you can't receive generosity easily from those you see as careless with money. There's also projection. Sometimes the judgment of spenders is really about your own forbidden desires. You want things too. You just don't let yourself have them. Watching others spend freely touches the part of you that's been locked away. The judgment is the guard at the door. If you can make their spending wrong, you don't have to feel the grief of everything you've denied yourself. The first purchase is the hardest. Not because of the money, but because of what it triggers. The guilt that floods in before the transaction completes. The voice that asks if this is really necessary. The urge to put it back, to find it cheaper somewhere else, to decide you don't need it after all. Learning to spend without guilt isn't about ignoring these feelings. It's about understanding them, and then choosing anyway. Start small. Not with big purchases that overwhelm the system, but with tiny ones that feel slightly uncomfortable. A coffee you didn't make at home. A book at full price. A meal that costs more than the cheapest option. Let the guilt come. Feel it without obeying it. Notice that nothing terrible happens. The money leaves, the world continues. You survive. Each small spend is an experiment, teaching the nervous system that letting go isn't death. The goal isn't to become a spender. It's to become free. Free to spend when it makes sense and save when it makes sense, without compulsion driving either direction. This requires separating your worth from your account balance. You are not your savings. Your value doesn't decrease when your balance does. Money is a tool, not an identity. When you can hold that truth in your body, not just your mind, the guilt begins to loosen. Permission is the final piece. Not permission from logic. You already know you can afford things. Permission from the deeper self, the one that learned long ago that spending was dangerous, that self needs reassurance, not argument. It needs to know that you'll still be safe, still be okay, still be you even after the money leaves. Spending without guilt is an act of trust. Trust in yourself, in life, in the ground beneath your feet. There's a number in your head. Maybe you've never said it out loud, but it's there. The amount that would be enough. The savings that would finally let you relax. The balance that would mean safety, security, permission to stop worrying. But here's what most people discover. The number keeps moving. You reach it, and it's not enough. There's always another threshold, another reason to keep holding on. True freedom isn't in reaching the number. It's in realizing the number was never the point. Enough isn't an amount. It's a feeling, a relationship with money that allows you to hold it loosely, spend it wisely, and trust that more can come. The person who feels enough with modest savings is freer than the one who feels scarcity with millions. The prison isn't the balance. It's the belief that you're never quite safe. When you know what's enough, something shifts. You can spend on what matters without guilt. You can save without compulsion. You can give without keeping score. Money becomes a tool again, not a measure of your worth or a wall against fear. You use it in service of life instead of hoarding it in fear of death. The grip loosens. The shoulders drop. You're no longer owned by what you own. If this put words to something you've lived but never named, you're not alone. The relationship with money is one of the deepest, most hidden patterns we carry. It was shaped before you could choose it and runs beneath everything you do. But patterns can change. Not by forcing yourself to spend or shaming yourself for saving, but by understanding what money really means to you, and slowly, gently, choosing something freer.